Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Ukraine, Russia, China show on Pod TV. My name is Sasha Star, and today we have Dr. Jonathan Lockwood. Welcome to the show, Jonathan.
Thank you, Sasha. Glad to be here.
As always, and Ivan Kucherenko from Kyiv, Ukraine. Welcome to the show, Ivan.
Hello, Sasha. Hello, Jonathan. Hello to everyone. Glad to be here today as well.
Okay, and if you have a video for us, we might as well start with. Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, I had a really sad video, but we should watch it, so we can start with it.
Okay.
A five-story civilian building has been completely leveled by a ballistic missile that flew directly into it, hitting it and killing multiple people and injuring even more. Currently, first responders are on the scene. You have dogs looking for people in the background right now. First responders are taking down the fires. There is still an active air raid siren. There hasn't been an all clear. There are various drones. There are various ballistic missiles and cruise missiles flying across the city right now, as it has been throughout the country this whole night.
Близько 3 ночі комбінований ракетний дроновий удар по місту Києву, близько 20 локацій. Зараз ми знаходимося на локації, де загинуло на даний момент 3 осіб, із них 2 дітей. 3 ми деблокували. По місту Київ відбуваються пошукові, рятувальні та аварійні роботи Державної служби з надзвичайних ситуацій. Всі
We are now at one of the sites in Kyiv that was hit by Russian missiles. As you can see behind me, the damage was inflicted on residential buildings, businesses, and schools. As of now, 8 people were pronounced dead and 45 people were injured, although the numbers are expected to rise.
We are currently at the railway depot of Ukrzaliznytsia, the Ukrainian state-owned company responsible for the country's railway system. Earlier today, a Shahed drone struck this very location. It detonated inside a rail car after direct impact. The carriage was completely destroyed by fire, while another was partially damaged.
I see that video is removed from the studio, yeah? Mark, can you please restore it?
I'm at loss at really what's happening here. Is there anything that could stop these horrible attacks of Russians against civilians, children, women, and others? Is there anything at all? And if not, let's see if Russians are able to do these attacks every hour and a half. 24 hours a day. Then what? Anybody can tell.
Right. Well, let's put this in its true perspective. Right now, I was watching a recent presentation by General Keane, who is the senior strategic analyst on the Fox network. And as you know, as you are probably aware, the Trump administration watches the Fox network very closely for their main source of information. And General Keane said very clearly that Putin has clearly chosen war as his best means for achieving his strategic objectives. Peace is out of the question for him. So what that means is the only way that we can truly stop this, and I know it is not pleasant, it is not perfect, but apparently this is the only way forward, that Russia must be decisively defeated sufficiently so that it is incapable of carrying on its more offensive operations against Ukraine. And as I've been contending all along, although the Crimea is, I consider, the strategic center of gravity of this entire war, Ukraine must continue to, and as much as possible, accelerate its efforts to strike deep at Russia's logistical facilities, its economic facilities, its ability to make war. Ukraine has to, as much as possible, with the help of its European allies, and hopefully, I would contend, additional help from the U.S. They will need additional help from the U.S., from defense contractors, as defense contractors gear up their production in order to meet our own strategic requirements, but also to meet what we anticipate will be increased strategic requirements. So right now, as the Romans used to say, if you want peace, prepare for war. In this case, if you want peace, wage war until your opponent cannot wage it anymore.
Okay,
Yeah.
Jonathan, thank you for the answer for this question. But I want to, you said that Ukraine should do it with the help of European partners and probably some help from the United States.
I won't say definitely the United States at this point, because
definitely United States, because as far as you remember, United States is one of the guarantees of Ukrainian independence and sovereignty under the Budapest
I stand corrected.
Yeah, and how Ukraine can do it if current Trump administration and Pentagon prohibits to use weapons provided by the United States towards Russian military objects, I mean long-range weapons, and not only about ATACMS or HIMARS systems, but it spreads to, for instance, Storm Shadow missiles, which are being produced by Italy and Great Britain, but obviously depends on some components from the United States. That's why that prohibition also spreads on Storm Shadow missiles. So how Ukraine unfortunately don't have our own strategic and ballistic missiles. We gave up those weapons over the Budapest Memorandum. After Ukraine signed it, the whole strategic potential of Ukraine was disarmed. So we are now depending on strategic and middle range weapons provided by our partners, especially the United States, because the United States is one of the major partners. So how Ukraine can do it without having, and from the same time, President Trump is asking President Zelensky, why you are not striking on Moscow?
That's really a puzzling one for me. Why he's saying that? He may not be aware that right now, and Ukraine for its part may have decided right now not striking Moscow is not the only thing they need to do in order to, because all of Russia's war-making potential is not centered in Moscow. It is important to strike Moscow to show the Russians that they are not invulnerable to being hit by Ukraine if necessary. But in order to
strike Rostov, which is pretty closer to the battlefield and where there is a headquarter of the military command, actually, of Russian military command. It's in Rostov. But Ukraine, to strike Rostov and military HQ obviously needs long-range missiles like ATACMS provided
Yes.
by the United States or Storm Shadow, but we can't use them to strike Rostov. So how can Ukraine?
Basically, what I would say is that the Trump administration must be persuaded by the military experts that it is watching on Fox Network, such as General Keane. General Keane is in effect our best ally in this respect, because he is not only is he retired 4-star general, retired 4-star Vice Chief of Staff of the Army, but he is also the director of the Institute for the Study of War, which has been publishing some very accurate and very excellent analyses of the Russian-Ukrainian war. And because General Keane has been coming out saying that, it is clear that Putin is relying on war as his means of achieving his strategic goals, this should be sufficient to persuade the Trump administration that says, okay, we've heard it from our experts that they may move towards more vigorous action against Russia.
I hope so. But have you heard the recent news of what President of Portugal said on President Trump? If you haven't read it, Portugal is a European country, obviously, and this is that news that is in all media since yesterday. And President of Portugal, Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa, made a harsh statement about US President Donald Trump. In his opinion, the American leader is objectively a Soviet or Russian agent, reports Euronews. And
again,
let me read his quote.
Sure.
The supreme leader of the world's largest superpower is objectively a Soviet or Russian asset, said de Sousa on August 27 during a speech in Castello de Vaide. Trump, objectively, the new US leadership strategically contributed to Russia, he added. And that's the point. Since President Donald Trump came into his office in the White House, all efforts he did, they were strategically contributed not towards the Ukraine and peace for Ukraine, but towards Russia and continuing the Russian aggression. And that's the point, maybe. So we can all military experts on Fox News, on other media, they can say what they're saying, but President Trump will do everything to actually not to make Ukraine win. He will cover red carpet and make American soldiers stay on their knees to the dictator plane to lay this red carpet. He may applaud him and he may put him in his limousine, make a selfie, like we've seen in the previous video or previous show. Glorify a war criminal, actually stop military aid to Ukraine, stop providing intelligence data to Ukraine. His previous business and political partner Elon Musk may stop providing Starlink data to Ukraine in order for Ukraine to stop their operations in Crimea, which actually was done also when Elon Musk ordered to stop providing Starlink satellite data to Ukraine in order to prevent Ukraine from some Crimean operations. And all these efforts are strategically towards Russia. What efforts from Donald Trump administration since that half year were on the part for Ukraine, not for Russia?
Well, if that is attempting to assist Russia, I don't think the attempts to assist Russia were very effective, because right now the Russians are not even close to achieving their objectives of military victory. So again, that's if it's assisting Russia, it's not effective at all. And I would say that the Ukrainians still hold the key cards in its ability to surprise and do the unexpected, do much more than their opponents, the Russians, and certainly more than even their allies or supposed allies are expecting them to do. So I am still counting on the ability of the Ukrainian military to pull off a strategic operational surprise that will throw the Russians completely off balance and enforce, if not an outright defeat, certainly force the Russians to give up their overall objective of destroying Ukraine. Because that remains, because based upon General Keene's analysis, Putin has clearly committed himself to war as his way forward for achieving his objectives. And given that leaves Ukraine really no choice but to find the best means possible for inflicting defeat upon whatever means they have available. And they have been proven to be very creative and innovative in producing those means. So, yes,
they are very creative and innovative. There is no doubt about that. However, I have a difficulty to understand how they can start any meaningful attack against Russian positions if they cannot use very important element is medium and even short-term missiles against Russians, unless Pentagon removes its restriction. Since Pentagon is not removing its restrictions, as we speak now, it can happen in 25 minutes time, but right now they're still there. So Jonathan, explain to me how Ukrainian can do that.
They can ignore the restrictions if necessary.
Oh, really? So
they could. Yeah,
so,
they could.
So
they could. If they decided that the risk was worth the gain. If they decided,
okay, they're taking full risk, or whether it's successful or not so successful operation. In the meantime, that will probably stop any sale of American weapons to Ukraine via Europe. It will be stopped. So they will be then from now on restricted only with European weapons, and a lot of them, as we know, have U.S. element. So it will still be restricted. So I think, okay, if Ukrainians will demonstrate that they are ready to ignore the restrictions of Pentagon, I don't think that European would go as far as Ukraine, and they will most likely stop delivering of any weapons with elements of U.S. Technology to Ukraine. So then Ukraine almost would have to capitulate in the next hour and a half. But you see, my question is this. Now, when this picture goes around the world of what's happening in Kyiv, wouldn't that would benefit the so-called proponents of peace? Will not call the names, but you know whom I'm talking about. So they will say that, well, look at what happened to you. So do you care about Donbass and Zaporizhia and Kharkiv and whatever else Russian? Well, just give it to them. Stop the war, stop the killings. What would you say to these people?
difficult situation, isn't it?
It is not easy, that's for sure. I agree.
There are no easy answers in this situation, Sasha. There really aren't. Even though you might think there are, there really aren't.
No,
and that is the unfortunate thing about this. Here you have two combatants, Ukraine and Russia, with politically irreconcilable objectives. You know, Russia believes that Ukraine should not exist, and Ukraine believes that Russia has no business interfering with the existence of Ukraine and wants nothing to do with Russia. And so here you have these two. It's pretty much like, it's almost like the Punic Wars between Rome and Carthage back in those ages, where the Roman senator would end every one of his speeches with "Carthago delenda est," Carthage must be destroyed. And Carthage, for its part, knew that it had to defeat Rome, and had an unsuccessful campaign with Hannibal, in the Punic Wars, and they were unable to prevent their own destruction eventually. But in this case, now you have, it's not quite the Punic Wars, but you have two you have two nations with politically irreconcilable objectives for which diplomacy is impossible in that situation.
Such situation was in quite recent history. I'm talking about 1948, when Israel state was created, and five much stronger Arab countries started the war of attrition against Israel. Actually, they wanted to send Israelis out to the sea, and
Yes.
get all this country back to Arab protectorate. Now, what's happened is that Israeli, which was much weaker, much smaller than any of the Arab countries, actually all, from what I remember, all population of Israel at the time was something 6, maximum 700,000 people.
Yeah,
That's
less than 1 million. Yeah.
So they were able, believe it or not, to defeat the armada of five Arab countries.
Yes.
Now, look at the recent war between Iran and Israel, where Iran used their missiles, medium-range missiles, and drones to attack Israeli territory and inflict casualties among civilians. Although not great casualties, because Israelis were quite disciplined enough to go into shelter once the siren would start, and so therefore there were unfortunately casualties, but not too numerous. Now, what's happened in Ukraine? Why people are not using the shelters to get out of this imminent attacks once the siren is there? So if it would minimize the casualties, let's see, I remember in previous attacks, sometimes they would use 30 missiles and 200 drones or so on, and it would be 2 people killed and 3 people wounded, or so on. So how come this attack was so different and so much devastating? Now, another thing is, I'm talking to my Ukrainian friends sometimes, people in Odessa, for example, or so. So they're telling me, oh, the life is beautiful. Everybody is on a beach. Everybody is in a restaurant. Everybody is enjoying themselves, or so on. And I'm thinking, well, Israel, when fighting war against Iran, was very different state of society's preparedness for war and willingness to fight and win. So I don't understand if Ukrainians don't have that attitude as to prevail and win, and just lose every day 30, 50, 100 people. I don't understand, because you see, okay, somebody might tell me that the Ukrainians were very successful to dispose Russian refineries, and they already inflicted damages to 17% of all Russian refineries. That's all great. But remember,
that's cumulative, that's long range.
It's a long
not
range.
Immediate.
But remember 1942, summer of 1942, Russia, Soviet Union lost 60% of its economy. So they had remaining 40%. And even this 40% were potent enough with Lend-Lease and with exhaustion of Germans and not their very clever maneuvering, but I leave it to war specialists. They were able to prevail and won the war eventually. So Ukraine, with this attitude that, okay, they will kill our 30, 40, 50 people, but we will bomb 1, 2, 3 this refineries. I don't think this is working for goods of Ukraine. That's my opinion.
Yeah, well, then that's a well-considered opinion. That's a very well-considered opinion, Sasha, because what that does is that illustrates the need for Ukraine to, however they can find it, and hopefully with some behind-the-scenes diplomacy, because we can't see everything that's going on behind the scenes. We have to concede that. We don't know what is taking place in the classified realm. So there may be some maneuvering behind the scenes with the U.S., and what we cannot see might well work to the advantage of Ukraine here in the intermediate to long run, because if they get the means to be able to inflict that decisive blow that I have been talking about, then there is much that can be, because you have to remember also in 1942, at the time, if you were looking at it at the time from the outside, just looking at the open press, things looked very, very desperate for the Allies in 1942. If you were looking at the press and you were looking at the press reports and what the Nazis were doing, it looked as if the Axis was on the verge of victory. They reached the peak of their successes in late 1942, when you had decisive battles taking place in Stalingrad, but also taking place in the Pacific and also in Midway and other places. There were decisive battles going on in North Africa. In late 1942, it looked as if, the Axis was about to win. And yet, all of a sudden, you had these decisive battles taking place with the aid of, at the time we did not know that, with the aid of ultra intelligence that we were using to be able to discern what the Axis was up to. And so there are things going on right now behind the scenes, which I would, as a retired intelligence officer myself, and when I was an intelligence officer during the Cold War, I can tell you that there were things that were going on that I participated in, and others that certainly we would not talk about today, and I will not talk about them until things that I did will have to wait until after I am dead in order to be revealed, thankfully enough. But the key thing here is that we still do not know that critical unknown information behind the scenes. And I am counting on that. I am counting on that between the U.S. and Europeans and the Ukrainians to be able to come up with that decisive military operation, because this is what really has to occur. Because, Putin, it is clear that Putin is not going to use diplomacy to try and end the war. He must be compelled, and we have to look for, and if dare I say, we have to pray for a decisive act on the part of the Allies and the United States. And I am confident that it will occur, and that the wrong, as they say, the wrong shall fail and the right prevail. So I'm cautiously optimistic and confident, but I am counting on that eventually the Trump administration is going to fully realize that there is no path to peace through diplomacy, that it must be, in this case, it is going to have to be won on the battlefield.
Well, yesterday, German Chancellor Merz, he said that it's absolutely clear that there will be no meeting between Zelensky and Putin, and it's clear that Putin goes the way of fighting the war, not the peace. So how many world leaders have to confirm that? Not too complicated concept.
Yeah. Yes. And behind the scenes, we have to assume that these realizations and these statements are having their effect behind the scenes with the Trump administration. You have to say they are not oblivious to them. But now there is probably quite a bit of discussion going on behind the scenes, discussions which I certainly am not privy to. But we have to assume there is a lot of, just as there are a lot of more complicated discussions going on in the Pentagon about how many weapon systems to build, what restrictions do we have? Do we continue to impose these restrictions? Because a lot goes on in the Pentagon. The Pentagon is the size of a small city. They engage in an incredible range of things that occur practically every day in that building. And so it's something that really the outside observer looks at the surface events, and we say, this is simple. Why? But as Clausewitz once said, everything in war is simple, but even the simplest thing is extremely difficult.
Yeah. Ivan?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a question for Jonathan.
Sure.
Jonathan actually remembered his experience as an intelligence officer during Cold War. As far as I remember, you were in Western Germany.
Yes, I was stationed. Well, first I was stationed in Darmstadt as a brigade intelligence officer for a Hawk and Patriot brigade, the first deployment of Patriot in the European theater. And it's that time. And
that's really great experience. So you probably know the means and the methods of the KGB.
Yes.
Obviously were instructed by them.
Oh yes, we got a lot of instruction as American intelligence officers in our training. We were also, taught to, and especially when we got classes on counterintelligence, we were exposed to and taught the methods of the KGB.
I just want because I'm not I can just calm down because of that news and that quote from President of Portugal. And in your opinion, as a former intelligence officer, which is acknowledged with the methods of KGB, what are the chances that President Trump was really actually hired as KGB, or they have some kind of compromising materials on him during which they've collected during the early 90s when he was in Moscow arranging those beauty contests with the models, and I don't know what they were doing in that Moscow hotels. What was the age of these models actually? Because Elon Musk in his when he confronted Donald Trump and with his great allowed retirement from the White House, he mentioned the Epstein case and that Donald Trump is in some kind of relevant to the Epstein case. So is there a chance that Putin and KGB have really something on Donald Trump, making him on a strategic level playing towards the interest of Russia?
I would say there would be a chance, but I would say in this case it would be a very small chance. They do not have sufficient leverage, even if it existed, that would persuade their president to do their bidding. I really don't see that as a very plausible explanation. I do know that the KGB does engage in a lot of disinformation. They plant a lot of stories. They plant a lot of narratives which look plausible, but they are intended to cause disruption, not necessarily to persuade others to do what they're asking, but simply to cause disruption and chaos. And the KGB is very good at doing that. So I would say, I would take that, while there is a possibility, certainly they have probably attempted it, and they are probably looking for ways to gain leverage, but I would say in this case, no. Yes, Sasha.
Well, I've read possibly every book about Trump what there is to be written. Everyone. I will surprise, and I would like somebody to help me to uncover yet another book which I haven't read for some reason. I will read it then. Now, speaking about Trump being I don't know, hired by KGB or anything like that, I don't believe that. What is quite possible, and I would assume that that's probably what happened, that Trump, his first visit was in 1987, but people are not taking into account that he came into orbit of KGB back in the end of the 70s when he was building his first hotel in Manhattan. I'm talking about whether it's not his father's another hotel, but it was Donald Trump's hotel. And he needed to buy 200 television sets for the rooms to be opened soon. And he was put in touch with this small TV shop owned by Russian emigres who obviously cooperated with KGB. And they told him that no problem, we will sell you 200 sets. Yes, you can pay us in a month's time. So you have free credit for 1 month. Furthermore, there will be not regular American TV. They have also the European technology, which was used at that time. I think it was CPAL. I don't remember for sure, but it was technology at that time used by France. It was France originated, but it was used in Russia. So these television sets, which you will get, Donald, for the same price as regular American TV junk, you will get both systems into one. The only thing is you have to pay exactly on the 30th, I believe it was 30th of October. And so Donald was very happy and he was leaving, and the owner told him, but remember, Donald, it's the 30th of October, not 31st. 31st will be too late, 30th of October. And 30th of October, they got all the money from Donald. So that was his first encounter with the KGB influencers or agents, or you can call them anything what you want. It doesn't really matter. The agent probably would require somebody that he is hired by KGB, he's getting monthly salary, he has to produce monthly reports, and so on, always be available for communications and so on. Of course, Donald was not part of that. I don't believe unless somebody will prove that beyond any reasonable doubt. I don't believe that. But that by 1987, a man of his stature, that he was already a rising star in New York business, especially real estate or so on, going to Moscow, that was, trust me, it cannot be unnoticed by top KGB people. Just
yeah. Well, they would certainly notice that.
So obviously he was properly treated in Moscow and opened up to any discussions and learn about him a little bit more or so on. It's possible, most likely. However, it's coming now 2000, year 2000, after 6 bankruptcies with all these casinos, no American bank would touch him. And somehow, I'm curious what triggered that, but the result was that there were enormous amount, billions of dollars, flowing into Trump companies from Russia through Deutsche Bank. Deutsche Bank had to pay a few years later penalty of $34 billion for money laundering. However, Trump was untouched by that. The rest is more recent story. Probably you know just as well as I do, so I don't want to contribute anything. The only thing is one commentator, don't remember the network, he said that imagine that Trump indeed was the KGB or FBI, what is it now, FSB? Company. Okay, so let's see he was actually engaged and he is working with them, trying to do all the best. As the president of the United States, if he were indeed Russian asset, could he do any more than he already did to benefit Russia and Putin in particular? And the answer was clearly no, because what else he could have done? He protected Putin for the last 7-8 months, and there are no sanctions. There is absolutely nothing that would make Putin's life a little bit not as comfortable as it is now. Nothing at all. But Jonathan, you're right. Maybe it just requires more time.
Yeah.
The problem is only much.
Yeah. How much? That's an excellent question. How much more time? And because any leverage that might have is insufficient to be able to persuade President Trump, to put President Trump effectively under their control. I mean, the Russians had that those techniques work only up to a certain point. And at this point, once it is becoming increasingly clear that Putin is clearly not interested in peace, and President Trump, having a, shall we say, a very healthy ego, a very healthy regard for his own abilities, is not likely to want to be perceived as being a chump or a tool of the Russians. So there is that conflict going on. And so I think that the increasing evidence, the increasing reality that is emerging is that the Trump administration, however slowly or not as quickly as we would like, is going to swing over and fully support Ukraine, I predict, within the next several months, if not the next several weeks. So this is a very, very complicated, we must admit, very complicated, but fascinating set of circumstances. And right now, I still contend, using that old phrase, correlation of forces, I still believe that the correlation of forces is moving in favor of Ukraine, not only on the battlefield, but also in the political sphere, and certainly increasingly in the economic sphere as well. And so, however costly it may be right now, it is certainly preferable to Ukraine's submitting to Russian domination. And I don't think that is going to be a realistic outcome for this war. It may be costly, but then again, all wars are costly to one extent or another.
Well, very interesting. Ivan, please.
Yeah, it was a great point about how much time. And on Monday, we have another deadline which Donald Trump gave to Putin. He said 2 weeks, and on Monday there is actually the time when these 2 weeks are ending, and what we can see on Monday. Will Donald Trump implement more sanctions on Russia and on third countries who are trading with Russia, and obviously give Ukraine or sell Ukraine some more weapons that Ukraine can use, and say publicly that there is no restrictions on using Storm Shadow, ATACMS, all other stuff provided, all weapons provided by United States and partners on any object in Russia, even on Moscow, and Putin.
That is
from one point.
Yeah.
Actually, that may be a sign that Donald Trump is not Russian asset.
Right.
And if KGB, FSB have something on Donald Trump, then we will probably see in media, because their blackmail was not okay. Or on Monday there will be nothing, which was previously, or during all previous deadlines from Donald Trump, like 24 hours, 1 week, 1 month, etc. There were several deadlines Donald Trump set to Russia in order for them to go on unconditional ceasefire or on some escalation. And we've seen that Russia is not going to stop this war. We've seen from the video from the recent strike yesterday on Kyiv, which hit the civilian targets, which made 23 people for now, 23 people dead, 19 adults and 4 children, and a lot of people being injured in Kyiv. And it's a great sign that Russia is not going to stop, that Putin is escalating, that Putin is humiliating Donald Trump, that he is not considering his deadlines, he is not considering his position to stop this war. He is not going to let Donald Trump earn the Nobel Prize for as a great peacemaker,
which should make him really angry.
Yeah, what Jonathan, Sasha, and Jonathan and Sasha,
sure.
I want to ask both of you, what we will see on Monday from Donald Trump particularly?
Okay, I'll say that yes, you're right. Trump is very upset that even such people as Yasser Arafat, they got Nobel Peace Prize, and Trump not. So this is very upsetting. I totally agree with that.
And Barack Obama has a Nobel
Peace Prize. You say, what? Obama gets a Peace Prize and I don't? That's going to make him mad too. But just to on a more positive note, I have to tell you about a leader named Sukarno of Indonesia. You may recall him. So the KGB tried to blackmail Sukarno when he visited Moscow. and they had him. They sent a couple of Russian prostitutes, or had him to basically seduce him or whatever, have sex with him in his hotel room, and then the KGB later met with Sukarno, and they showed Sukarno these photographs of him naked in bed with these women. And you know what Sukarno did? He said he wanted copies. He wanted copies so that he could send them to the newspapers there in Indonesia. And he replied to them, "My people will be so proud of me."
But will Americans proud of Donald Trump when we'll see photos and videos of him with some prostitutes of probably illegal age in Moscow in the early 90s? Or
will Donald Trump pull a Sukarno on them then? He says, "Okay, yeah, go ahead," or will he do like the Duke of Wellington? Once claimed that someone tried to blackmail him with some information which would have been embarrassing to him, and Wellington's response was, "Publish and be damned." So there are various responses to attempts at blackmail, and it will be interesting to see if President Trump responds in a similar manner should such a provocation occur. And that, gentlemen, I believe, is a fitting note. I'll pass the baton to you, Sasha, to close us out on an appropriate note of optimism.
Sure. Yeah, actually,
what Donald Trump do on Monday?
What will he do? I think he will react with outrage. He will be outraged, and he will be provoked into escalating further his actions against Russia, and he may be behind the scenes. I predict he may give direction to the Pentagon, say, "You better lift those restrictions."
Yeah,
he's commander in chief. The Pentagon has to do what he says.
Yeah, I agree with you. And apparently, one interesting comment about this U.S. produced little weapons not to be used on Russian territory unless it would be permitted by Pentagon. The theory is that Trump wanted to have some kind of a toy at his disposal. So he'll say, "Oh, Putin, Vladimir, do you want peace? Oh, you don't want a peace. Okay, restrictions are lifted. Okay, Ukrainians, go. Rostov, Voronezh, the targets." Donald, what are you doing? Okay, I'll stop it for the next 24 hours. Putin, you still want war or peace? What is it?
That could be an amusing little game, shall we say?
It could be.
Also, one other consideration that the Pentagon has against using certain types of sensitive weapons deep against Russia is that if those weapons in particular have certain classified components, that sensitive technology that the Pentagon does not want to have give Russia the ability to exploit in any way, even through fragments or looking at the wreckage, they would have restrictions on the use of those weapons. It would be the similar reasoning why the United States does not sell any of its B-2 bombers to foreign powers, because that contains very sensitive classified technology that they don't want anyone else to have. So the Pentagon does have certain security considerations in either using weapons or in selling weapons.
Jonathan, so you can imagine that some country will indeed buy a B-2 bomber. And I think some countries which have enough abundance of money, like Qatar, perhaps Saudi Arabia or so, I think they can afford to buy at least one B-2 bomber. So could that be possible that the bomber will be delivered, and then they pay money, the bomber is delivered, and now they've been informed that without special permission from Pentagon, they cannot use it. Yeah, it's yours. You own the bomber, but you cannot use it.
That's why the Pentagon would not sell the bomber to these foreign powers.
But they're selling ATACMS missiles to Ukraine, either straight to Ukraine or through Europeans. And then they say, "Oh, you own it. You paid for it. You own it. It's all yours. Oh, but you can't use it. Sorry, guys."
Yeah. So that's a policy which I have a feeling is, as the Russians continue to demonstrate their intransigence in continuing to pursue war, that is a further lifting of a restriction which the Pentagon and the president will lift in the coming months to be able to increase the level of pain beyond economic sanctions onto the battlefield and against the Russian economy and their infrastructure until the Russians are no longer able to continue meaningful offensive operations against Ukraine. And that is when Ukraine will have the opportunity to inflict that decisive military counterblow. And again, I predict against Crimea. That will be the decisive battle.
Well, I believe that it's good that on Monday we will definitely must have some news from
Oh
Trump.
yeah,
Okay.
without a doubt, we will have another. It will have another interesting indicator of the future direction of the war in Ukraine.
Exactly. And then Tuesday next week we will be able to discuss what's happened on Monday.
and we will continue to say, okay, now what's going to happen? So, in any case, gentlemen, this has been a very, very, very interesting discussion, and I think that I can still contend that there are still signs of optimism, if only because we do not know everything that is going on behind the scenes, and we have to hope that reason will eventually prevail.
So by Monday we will know a little bit more about
Yes.
what's really happening behind the closed doors, and we'll find out. In the meantime, have a great weekend, everybody, and Slava Ukraini.
God bless America, and
God bless America.
yeah. Oh my goodness, Ivan.
And Canada and the United Kingdom and other countries.
Everybody but Russia at this point. Okay.
And it's Commander-in-Chief, great Donald Trump.
Oh my God.
Who is also not
Just
Russian
maybe
asset.
he listens to our program. So
Yeah, really. Yeah,
still,
thanks.
we have to
I think God will listen to that kind of prayer, Sasha.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. See you all on Tuesday, same place, same time. Bye-bye, everybody.